Hello, hello. My second live of the night. But I felt it was important to talk more about why I find it so important to talk about awakening through sexuality, shame, guilt, etc. I have a lot of people in my life that think I'm nuts, or there's something wrong with me, or I have, I don't know, some kind of fetish or whatever they want to call it. And for a long time, I was normalized down to say that that was true, and I need to be ashamed, or there was something wrong with me, or other things, because I spoke so openly about something that's verboten or societally not okay. And I had to dig out from a lot of people that didn't understand. My parents didn't understand. My brother doesn't really understand. I don't think my sister doesn't either. There was times of shame. People around me, people in my community, the Tantra community and others, as I kind of branched out, they couldn't handle me. They shamed and guilted me for a long time about some experiences, and then they projected all their shit on me. It was a nightmare. I literally had to shut down for probably 2 years of my life just to, sorry for the noises, just to find myself, to find my integrity, to find why these things were important and why I was doing those things in the community and dealing with messy energies like trauma and other things, because in our inverted matrix that we're living in now, sexuality has been taken from us literally, and the sexuality that we did have, the relationships that we did have, was filled with shame and guilt and traumas and messiness and attachment and a whole bunch of other things. And I had to dig my way through some of the deepest, darkest stuff going to be able to find myself, to find the integrity to have, to build relationships from truth and honesty and making agreements, rather than a whole bunch of assumptions and unsaid stuff and then hating and building up these messes. I came through it, and I met women and even men where we started to talk about what we wanted and started to believe it was important to share and be very vulnerable and open. In my experiences with men, it was like, how do we have agreements of how to talk about stuff or deal with stuff, or teaching each other things. With women, it was much the same things, but it was also about building relationships, being able to build a play container with a woman instead of having to be in a committed relationship, and especially dealing with people that maybe have just been through divorce or in the middle of separation. How do you find your way back to having levels of intimacy after the woundings a lot of times that happened in relationship? And some of my hardest trials were trying to interact with people that were wounded, including my wounds as well, and negotiating a space to be in integrity. I know in one of my relationships, that was after my divorce or whatever, we got into situations where sexuality wanted to be shared, but they were still in relationship, and I couldn't handle being somebody that would cause pain to another person when the separation hadn't happened, or the relationship hadn't really ended. And having to stand up for some of that stuff was very uncomfortable, but it showed the integrity of my life. And it got me to a point where I could start to see that the sexuality wasn't the important factor. The connection, the intimacy, the trust, etc., was really important. And it taught me a lot. And then the relationships I created after that, not always were people in spaces where they wanted to be in a relationship, but they needed that connection, that trust, that healing energy, that ability to negotiate sexuality, to negotiate experiences where they could have vulnerability, but not having to be chasing living in the same house because they're still dealing with the traumas or the leftovers of that relationship. And it created these beautiful spaces where we got to be really truthful with each other and build relationship agreements and talk about what we wanted and what was important in our heart. And it got us to places where we could discuss attachment and make sure that discussions like anything unsaid cannot be assumed. For example, like, let's say sharing sexuality with a person is an automatic, oh, we're going into a relationship. Well, what if that isn't true? What if we have that discussion before we start and say, okay, I'm sharing sexuality? And yeah, some religion may say that's shameful or guilty, but the most freeing, beautiful place is to have a negotiated space where you can be intimate and deep with a person. I actually conjecture that you might even go deeper than you might go in a relationship, because you have nothing to lose if you've discussed it beforehand, and the vulnerability can be there without having to like, sometimes you'll go into a relationship with someone, you'll say their deepest vulnerability, and they'll get triggered and scared, and they'll use that to hack and slash you afterwards, and it's caused a lot of wounds. Where if you make an agreement with someone and say, okay, this is for this, and anybody can step away at any time. It doesn't mean you have to walk away or run away, but nobody's losing their home or having to divide their bank accounts or whatever, like a relationship would be. You're now negotiating from a space of, okay, I have my independent home here, and maybe my children are there, and oh, I have this space where I can be a man or a woman with somebody by choosing. And a lot of relationships, they'll do that in this undiscussed way, and it can create these really strange energies. But if you can get to the point where you can make a relationship agreement with someone, and you can start to explore your pleasure, your sexuality, your healing modalities through another person by opening a space without having to be fully committed and fully, and a lot of women might make them feel uncomfortable because they want that bonding, they want that other stuff. But I hate to say, we got to heal through some of the shit that has happened in our past, and be able to have a space where we can deal with it without getting mangled up with commitment and all the relationship stuff that hooks you in without truth or is unsaid because it's relationship. And we're really needing to unwind that because it's all been inverted and it's all been mangled up. And we got to find spaces where we can be ourselves and be all these things, where we can set boundaries, we can set what we want, we can discuss it in advance and explore it. And none of these spaces exist, and none of these freedoms of discussion and what we want and what our desires are, etc. There's no containers that allow us to do those things. And this is what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to speak and get people comfortable with saying what they want, and it's okay to want pleasure in your body, and been out of your last relationship, and maybe it's been a couple of years since you've had sexuality because you can't feel safe and you don't know how to get there, and all this kind of stuff. We're getting in our 40s and 50s of age, and we've only been battered and destroyed by all these things, but we have no way to create a space to find ourselves again. And to do that with a man or a woman or whatever, to heal with, to go into, and not be so hooked in that you can't walk away if they bother you or they say something bad. This is the power of agreements and building building this space and starting to be unconditionally loving to another, and having to let go of all the shit from the past, and having communities where people can share and bond and heal. This is what I want to bring space to. And I'm really standing here right now, and I want to destroy the energies around all this shame and guilt of people wanting to be sexual with each other and wanting pleasure and all this stuff. And I don't know how to describe it. I'm just tired of the judgment, and I fucking end it right here and right now, because what I have to offer is a fucking gift to everyone. And if you can't handle that, then go to a different place. But I'm here to bring the truth, to build a space where everybody can explore, ask for what they want, say no, say yes, say whatever they need to, so that they can get these things in their life and get the quickest possible healing that they need. And stop wandering around, comparing to others, sitting in shame, wondering what your parents will think, wonder what your friends will think. Just go and be your fucking self for a while, and ask what your desires are, and then connect with another person that wants the same things and ask what their desires are. And magic fucking happens. And if you can put some agreements around it, some really gentle structure, and have a community around it, that when things get shaky or you get uncomfortable or you get in a triggered spot, you can go and talk to somebody, and it doesn't have to be bad, and you don't have to run away from that person and tell them to fuck off. You say, hey, I need to go back to my space and I need to talk to somebody, and let's talk in a week or something. None of that goes with relationship. Not the way it is designed here. So we're building something new, and it's gritty and it's uncomfortable. It's going to set you free. So that's my intention, is to create those spaces, transcend the shame, transcend the guilt, and start to set people free. So I love you all. Thank you for listening. Let's start growing. Let's start creating something new, a new container for self-exploration. Love you all. Thank you.